Hello and welcome, everybody. So, my name is Steven, and this is the show where we bring together experts to break down some of the most fundamental topics in HR. Today, we're going to be talking about applicant tracking systems, or ATSs, and we have four amazing guests with us. Please wave hello. I'm going to go ahead and introduce each of you right now. We have with us Heather Anderson, who is an HR manager at SP Plus. We have Jennifer Petzold, who is a senior corporate recruiter at EverAg. We have Joy Banfield with us, who's a VP of People Operations at Designity. And last but not least, we have Sarah Marchese, who is an HR manager at First Place AZ. So great group today. Really excited to jump in on a super big topic, applicant tracking system. And I want to start off and just lay down a definition because I know there might be some people listening who actually have no idea what we're talking about or what an ATS is. Sarah, would you mind just kicking us off? What is an ATS?
An applicant tracking system is a tool that companies use for their recruitment efforts, as well as you can store the resumes in the system and pull from that later on. If you have an urgent hire need and you previously interviewed or reviewed some amazing candidates that just couldn't make it work at the time of hiring for another role, but ultimately an ATS can be a godsend to the HR and talent acquisition departments.
Awesome. Okay, we got the definition out of the way. We're going to dive more into the feature set, all the features you describe in a second, go over some vendors, and get each of your opinions on a bunch of different names. But before we do, I want to hear your best pitches for an ATS. Sarah just said that they're a godsend, right? So obviously they must be worth having around. Jennifer and Joy and Heather as well. Let's hear it. Why should I buy an ATS as an HR pro at my company? Jennifer, if you want to kick us off on that one.
Yeah. As a recruiter, the applicant tracking system allows me to have in one area all the resumes. I can track their stages in the development through the interview cycle. And a lot of ATS systems will allow you to communicate in that one area to a hiring manager, to a potential client, and then many of them actually integrate into your pay. So it can follow from the moment a candidate is interested in their resume, the whole interview cycle to hire, and house all your communication so you don't have to revamp anything. You can just personalize it to each position. It can be a catch-all for everything. And most applicant tracking systems you can source. So you can find, as Sarah had said, passive candidates for future positions.
Wow. So you're saving time. You're finding maybe more applicants. You have applicants that you can ask to reapply to the jobs. Joy, what other reasons? Why else should I get an ATS?
So it can also be a better candidate experience because you're building a process that should have some stability from the first time a candidate visits a job all the way through till when they receive an offer. And like Jennifer mentioned, even go into onboarding and pay systems. There's also compliance reasons. Applicant tracking systems have additional security measures built in place because there are some regulations out there that require us to keep specific information safe or secure, and you can't collect those fields unless you're using an applicant tracking system. One actually interesting issue I found in not having an applicant tracking system is you have to communicate with these candidates some way. And if you're communicating with multiple candidates using your own company's email domain, that can actually lead to company emails looking like spam and getting spam filtered out and that type of thing. But using the applicant tracking system, you're communicating through the system itself versus using like your company email address. So that's even a different kind of business case that sets the whole company aside and could cause problems at an organizational level. So there's so many different factors that ultimately make it I think, just a critical decision to use a solid tool for applicant tracking.
Yeah. Heather, let's bring you in here too, and maybe give you an opportunity to play devil's advocate too, if you want. Are there any companies that don't need an ATS, or is this across the board? Everybody sign up today. Make sure you have an ATS.
I think it would be if it makes sense for your company. I mean, I don't see any reason why not to have an ATS, especially in today's world where everyone is looking at remote work. Having to manage all of those papers is time consuming. And then you have to be in an office. And then are you keeping that information safe? Are you getting the correct information? Are you up to date with the laws? Are you up to date with those compliance measures, the EEO requirements? How are you keeping all of the documentation? How are you documenting the unbiasedness in your recruiting procedures? There's so much in that legal and compliance sense of DE&I and equity and making sure we're being fair to all of the candidates. If you don't have an ATS, how are you keeping track of all of that? Because that's a lot of data, plus all the statistics for your recruiting to help with your ROIs and your budgeting to your senior leaders. If you don't have that, how are you tracking all of that? Because I mean, maybe you are just amazing at Excel and everything's in there and you keep documentations. Like, I'm sure that there's ways to do it, but I've worked with and without it. And I've worked with it in a partial sense and in a full sense. And it has made my life so much easier to where it doesn't matter where I am at. If I have a senior leader that has a question about one of my candidates, I can log in anywhere and I've got all of their information right there.
Yeah.
It's easy peasy. I can get them answers immediately compared to, oh, I'm not at my office right now. I'm going to have to go through and then take the time to shift through all the papers, get a million paper cuts, then try to figure out where I'm going to stash it in my office along with everything else because, filing cabinets are still a thing. And it's so I think it really just depends. But you also have to look at the costs of the ATS systems because maybe you are just a super small company with, just a few employees, and it does make more sense to just use papers or even get one of those online filing where you can scan everything in and keep track of it there. If as long as the cost of the system outweighs, doesn't outweigh the benefits that you're going to have, then definitely look into it. There's a million out there for all different sizes of companies that you could look at. So finding one that's best for you, and if your company at this point doesn't, like, they're not, the benefits aren't going to outweigh the costs, then maybe you wait on it for a bit and just create some timelines of, hey, when we reach X, this is definitely when this is going to make more sense financially for our company.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's open up the question to the rest of the group too, because we have this really strong case for ATSs now. Heather's bringing up maybe it could cost too much. That could be one reason why you might wait until your company grows a little bit. Does anyone else want to jump in or share any other reasons where it might be the wrong time or the wrong? Maybe you're trying to hire the wrong role through an ATS that you shouldn't be using it. Or, if anyone has any thoughts on that, welcome to jump in.
I would think one of the only other ways you could justify not having an ATS is if you have your own internal tech team that has the ability to build something themselves, because some tech startups will have that, and you can build your whole interface and then you can customize it and make it exactly what you want it to be. I would caution and say you'll ultimately end up on spreadsheets, which can get really, it can get really complicated really quickly. But I think that's probably the only time I would say you don't need an applicant tracking system. And even that, it's as soon as you start scaling, it's got to be implemented.
And you don't need one if you're using third-party recruiting companies. Maybe your hiring needs aren't as robust as a lot of other companies, even if you're small. If you're a company that doesn't have a lot of turnover or you're using specialty recruiters, they have a different way of tracking it, and then they're liable if they didn't do something fair and equitable. But again, there are so many out there that can fit your size and budget. It's worthy of looking into because yes, it saves time.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I mean, let's just move forward with the rest of the conversation. Assume we're now talking to somebody who is looking for an ATS. They want it badly. They know they need it, and let's try to help them out as much as possible. So let's get into the feature set a little bit. Sarah, I think you started to bring up some of these features a little bit in the beginning around what an ATS is, and we kind of got a pretty good list already. But I want to ask this question of everybody. Maybe we can just go through. But what are the features you definitely want to see in an ATS that you're looking for, and what's personally your favorite feature that you use the most or think is the coolest thing, and you're just excited when you can use that feature in your ATS?
I can start.
Oh.
I like to have, I always say when you're getting an applicant tracking system, find out what other companies' programs can be integrated into it, such as background checks. I'm trying to think, texting. There are a lot of applicant tracking systems may not have all the features themselves, but they're integrated with other features. And to do your research on that, because some of them are key, like texting, the background, maybe doing the I-9s, DocuSign. Look for those additional features.
Yeah. Sarah, go ahead. And
I was just going to say, honestly, my perspective on this is coming from a candidate experience. Streamlined. Am I going to be able to upload my resume and be done? Or am I going to be forced to manually enter information still? Or am I going to have to double check the information that the ATS pulled from my resume and correct it? And, I'm not going to name any specific companies that are guilty of this, meaning the ATS vendor. But if when I was job searching, if I had ever come across that particular system where it says, powered by whatever, I was like, nope, I'm not applying for this job. It's so horrible. But it's, we're all busy.
Yeah.
Right. Candidates don't have time to have to manually enter information that's already on an uploaded resume or go through and correct the system.
Yeah. That's a great point in taking it from the candidate's perspective. Joy or Heather, I mean, what features do you look for in a solid ATS, and what's maybe one that's your absolute favorite that gets you excited?
So I've looked at a lot of different applicant tracking systems. I've worked with several, and really, like, there's a multiple factors that I feel like you should look at from both the candidate experience, because that's going to make your job as a recruiter so much easier, as well as the ease from the recruiter standpoint. So I feel like, Jennifer totally hit it on the head with the integrations, especially if you have safety sensitive features like background checks, the ability to text or email from the tracking system. One thing that I love about Applicant Pro is, and I don't work with them, I want to one day, is that they have the ability to put an actual job description still in there so you meet compliance, but then they have a job advertisement which can be molded to be way more friendly, especially if you're posting on search engines like Indeed or Glassdoor, where you're able to customize that but still meet the compliance of having the legalities of that job description listed in there, which so that it meets all those compliance features. I think that's really, really cool. But a big thing is, how easy does it parse your resume? Does it fill out things for you? And is it an iForm or not? Like, how easy is it to do on your phone? Because iForms are not phone friendly. They do not save easy. It is a pain in the butt process, and it can deter. I've lost a lot of applicants because of those complications, and because it takes so long. And this is something you'll hear from every recruiter, especially now. The easier it is for your applicants to apply, the better. So when you're looking at these applicant tracking systems, you're going to want to know, like, how do they work? What do they look at? How are they going to be notified? Is it, how easy is it for the applicant to go in and look at it, and how easy is it for us to go in and look at it to find people? Because the more complicated it gets, it complicates everything for everybody. So I think just seeing the ease of being able to work it from both sides is very, very important.
Yeah. Great point. Joy, what would you add on the feature sets?
I think the importance of the features is also going to depend on the industry that you're in, really. So I've worked in several different ones, which is one of the beauties of HR, right? Is it's a transferable skill set. So it means you have the potential to work in different industries. And the company that I'm with now has completely different needs than the company I was with 4 years ago. So it's you have to really be tailored to your industry and know that what problems are you trying to solve, both for your organization and for the candidate experience. For me, it's customization. In my current company, like how can we customize the application process, because we are integrating things like video responses versus just fill in the blank questions, and we don't even accept resumes. So how do we get that information? So for us, for me, it's about the customization when choosing a system.
Yeah. I mean, great call out that every organization is going to need a slightly different feature set. Let's start to jump into some specific vendors here and get some thoughts and opinions. And hey, it's okay if you give a thumbs up or thumbs down anything. This is a safe space. No one's going to come hunt you down, right? Or, maybe someone will come and say, hey, Joy, that was an awesome review. Here's $500. I don't know. Maybe you'll get sponsored. But Joy, why don't we start with you? I mean, you just said you're using a very different system right now than you've used in the past. Maybe what are you using right now, and what do you like about it or don't like about it? And we'll have everyone
today I am we're not using one. We have built ours from scratch, so that is a blessing and a curse, but right now it's sort of we've been reimagining our own internal hiring process, building that with the team we have, and it's on my 2023 roadmap. So I'm actually shopping for one right now. But the ones that I've used in the past, most recently, I was using Paylocity, which I actually really, really liked for a number of reasons. One was the system as a whole worked very well together. It was our HRIS. We had some training and compliance on there. Our time and labor was in there. There were additional tools. It was just I think they've done a good job with their suite of offerings, pulling it together, as well as offering good API links and crossovers and connections with some of the other systems. So I really liked Paylocity. That's probably the one that I've used that I would rate the highest.
Yeah. Well, I know, like Jennifer was saying, it's like you want all the integrations and stuff, or you could just have a system that's all in one and it's already integrated pretty seamlessly.
Right.
Okay, Sarah, let's jump over to you. I know you already had one off the bat that you don't like to apply through, so you're gonna have to name names, and it's okay. But tell us, what are some of the good ones? What are some of the bad ones you've seen?
Well, like Joy, we also are not using an ATS right now. We're too small and we rarely hire. So to Heather's point, we just don't have the need for one.
Yeah.
The system that I don't like is Taleo. Anytime I see something that says powered by Taleo, I'm like, nope, pass. But I have used a former company that I worked with. We used UKG. And even though I didn't have my hands on the talent acquisition side of it, it was actually really great with onboarding. They had the system set up where somebody applied to the job and that was it. So just that very streamlined, efficient method. But I liked UKG because you have all the reporting in there. So if you wanted to see, if you were getting a specific gender applying, race, whatever,
Yeah.
But also on the other side of that with the onboarding as well, we could see where everybody was in the process. Had they completed certain forms? Where were they with their I-9? All of it, and it was great.
That's awesome. Jennifer, what about you? Best ATS, worst ATS that you've worked with?
I can say it's the worst one, but it served the organization and the organization's needs. Just like Joy had said,
Yeah.
Who's the number one customer in using this ATS?
Yeah.
And one of my companies, we used Oracle, but marketing loved it. And they pulled a lot of information from it so that we could market our company. It really didn't matter that the rest of us had a really difficult time pulling our KPIs from it and documenting or trying to communicate within it. But and this was for a very large trucking company. It worked perfect because the applications just kept coming in, and that's why that was important. Then I've worked for medium-sized companies where iSIMS loved it. iSIMS, on a recruiting standpoint, allowed our operations department to actually create the job description, so I didn't have to. If they wanted an offer, they had to send it over and it had to be approved. So there was a chain of command, and you had one place to, house everything. It had its weak points too, as in it didn't have an HRS system. You know what I mean? So we could only use it for recruiting. It didn't integrate well for any of the other companies' needs. And then right now we use Paycor, and Paycor has a Paycor recruiting. So it has an HRS. It has, recruiting ATS in it. It has its downfalls too. It seems like sometimes one ATS will be great in one area and weak in the other. But right now it depends also on the features, as in you can purchase the base or you can do a medium or the advanced, and right now we're in the medium, so it's hard to navigate with operations. It does great for the HRS, it does great for recruiting, but not for operations. So I think most of them, what I like is that they're so similar that you can maneuver, and once you understand maybe one, it's easier to shop and compare the others. I'll save, you're going to ask a question later on as to best advice, but
Well,
you can find, I think, something wrong with all of them, and I think you can find things that are absolutely wonderful about all of them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Heather, what do you guys use over there at the airport?
Oh, the devil's advocate comes out again. So for I've used multiple. So when I was working with a smaller security company, and also a lot of our cities here, or at least one city here in Utah, uses Paylocity. I had the worst experience with Paylocity, and it was all in the setup. So I think how you start off with that is huge. We got pushed around a lot. We had a lot of issues, and I don't feel like we got the full benefit of it, because when it came to like the ACEA reports, they worked with us so closely, and that was an amazing experience. We made sure we got the 1095Cs out every year on time. They were amazing. They had a great dashboard. We used their community connections to keep in contact with our employees, kind of almost like a Facebook group, but it was through Paylocity. But we didn't use it for everything that could have, like with the city that I worked with. They used it for their scheduling and their payroll and their training, and really did as much as they could with it, which was awesome. Currently, I'm working with iSIMS and UKG, and we use UKG simply for our payroll system, like our timekeeping system. That's all we use it for. And then we use iSIMS, and I've really appreciated the integration of the texting, which is nice, but otherwise it is the biggest pain in my butt. I hate it. It's very cumbersome. And we're a DOT, so it is iForms, so it's not phone friendly. It isn't the greatest to get people to apply. Like, it's nice with like integrations with Indeed or Glassdoor because it already puts people in our system, but they have to apply, and all it is a resume submission, and then we have to talk to them, and then we have to send them the actual application, and then it takes forever to get that filled out, and then we have to do the next step and the next step and the next step, and then our background is through a different company. So it's very, very cumbersome and is definitely a challenge that I face every day to do it with. But then ironically, and I'm going to be hesitant because I don't know if I can announce this yet. But Utah SHRM actually uses Bamboo HR, and it's a volunteer, board. And that's been huge. Like, our president has been going around and talking at all of these really cool, state SHRMs, and he gets asked about it all the time. So we've used that to welcome our volunteers and use that for our training and our onboarding and helping out that way to just keep our state council intermixed with our local chapters. And that's been a really cool experience. And that's helped us tons, which is really cool. Fun, more news to come on that. Follow Utah SHRM to find out what it is. And then the funny thing is, but our president also works for Applicant Pro, and they're for smaller companies here in Utah that has an open IO, so they can really integrate with anything that you've got, which is really cool. And then you have Eddie, which is doing all this fun stuff. And like, really, is Eddie more geared towards the bigger companies, or are they smaller companies?
Yeah. So it'd typically be the first ATS that a company would ever get. Heavy focus on usability. Less than 50 employees is like the sweet spot, I'd say. Eddie is what we use. It's also the sponsor of HR Mavericks. It's an all-in-one HR platform that includes an ATS that our team has been building pretty effectively. So yeah, we'll definitely add that into the list. Definitely check it out if you're a smaller company. But yeah, sorry, Heather, I cut you off.
No, you're good. So I think really it just depends, I think, on the size, because with iCIMS, I mean, even though I'm stationed at the airport, that's not my company. My company's massive. We're in 49 states. We're in Canada and Puerto Rico. We have 3 different divisions, like a commercial, a bags, and an airport division. So, I mean, it's a huge company. So there's a lot of positive that comes out from a company standpoint, like the dashboards that our corporate recruiting gets amazing information. They can do so much with it, and it really does help streamline things across those 3 divisions, which is really nice. So there are positives and negatives to every single one. So I really think that, one, it's figuring out, like, Eddie, Bamboo HR, Applicant Pro, they're geared towards smaller companies, but then you've got UKG and Paylocity and iCIMS that could be from, medium sized to huge. Like, I really think there's just so many pros and cons to each one, depending on, to everyone's point, like what your company does and what they're looking for and what you need in your applicant tracking system.
Yeah.
I think you called something out that's really important too, Heather, which is the setup, right? Like, somebody's experience is going to be very different depending on implementation. And if we're talking about HR departments of one, or HR departments implementing the applicant tracking for the first time, you have to make sure that you're spending time on that setup and asking all the questions and playing devil's advocate. And it's going to change the entire experience if you get it right from day one, with no matter what system you're in, because it's so easy to derail and have a terrible experience, unfortunately.
Oh yeah. Like the company that I worked for with Paylocity, the salesperson was awesome, and then it just like fell down from there, and our rep kept changing, and then they kept making promises, and then they kept coming in, and then they kept ditching us. So when I'm really close with that management even still, and they actually switched over to Applicant Pro, and their hiring manager like sat down and walked them through everything, and the complete difference in those onboarding experiences made the difference. And it was incredible just how much that little bit of TLC from those people helping get it integrated it changed everything.
Yep.
Jennifer, I see you unmuting. Was there something you wanted to add there?
No, I my follow-up will talk about the setup, because I think, like they said, if you have the foundation, everything else will run smoother. It won't be perfect, but there'll be less surprises, and it'll feel like you spent the money, and it was worth it.
Yeah. Well, we have all these vendors now kind of listed out. We know the implementation is important, but let's kind of help the listener on the decision phase now a little bit before we even get that implementation. What should the buying process look like? I know we've already kind of tiered out some of these vendors by employee size, maybe, or feature sets, but what would you do they just Google applicant tracking systems for small businesses and then just look at the list and then call the number one listed one there and just buy it? Is it more intense? Are you getting out a spreadsheet and rating each one? Jennifer, maybe you could kick us off on this topic, and then we could jump over to Sarah as well. What are your best tips on the actual decision making process and what to buy?
I recommend you decide who all is going to use the system and request those demos, and request they do a demo for everybody involved if you can't get everybody on that one meeting, which I also don't recommend you get everybody on the one meeting. Make them earn that you want them, because they will do demos, they'll do follow-ups. Do that deep dive, because you're trying to make whomever you identify on your teams happy. I think everybody will agree you'll prioritize who's more happy or who you have to make more happy. But I would say let everybody who wants to see a demo do it. That's what that initial dive does.
Yeah. Sarah, what would you add? Tips on the buying process, decision making process.
Ultimately considering, like Jennifer said, who's going to use it, but also on that other end, if you were a candidate, is this a system that you would want to engage with? Because in my personal experience, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. My personal belief is that an employee experience can actually begin at the candidate level. Yeah. So you want to make sure that their experience is amazing from the get-go, as amazing as it can be. It's technology we're talking about here, so it's not going to be perfect, but it's as awesome as it can be.
Yeah. Joy, let's maybe give you the last word on this one. I mean, what additional wisdom would you add on the process for picking a system?
I guess one thing that hasn't been called out is, in addition to Googling it, for the right size of your company, go look at your competitors and see who they're using too. You can always find that by looking in the job applications, and ultimately you can see where the jobs are hosted, and that's what's going to tell you which applicant tracking system they're using. But I think that, find one of your competitors who you think is doing it right, see what they're using, see what the experience is like, test it yourself, apply. I may or may not be guilty of applying with dummy names in previous roles, because you want to know what the process is like, and differently from a sales call. So in addition to the sales and the demo calls, do your own research too. And that's actually where I'm starting for us when we're looking for our next one, is by comparing to some of our competitors and seeing what works and what has good reviews.
Yeah. Well, sounds like, Joy, you need to just document this entire journey you're on right now, and then we'll share it in this encyclopedia entry or something, publish it. That was the last major topic I wanted us all to discuss. We're a little bit short on time, but we always like to give everyone one last opportunity to kind of share a brief last bit of advice. Thinking of these listeners or watchers or viewers who are trying to buy an ATS for the first time, or switching, or looking at systems right now, what is your final piece of advice for them in a sentence or two? Heather, we'll let you start on this one. We'll jump over to, we'll just go in alphabetical order here, huh? Jennifer, and then Joy, and then we'll close with Sarah.
Okay. My piece of advice, I really believe in doing your research, to push all the goodness that these wonderful ladies have talked about. And as you're watching the HR Maverick panels ATS systems are brought up in numerous ones at different avenues. So I would say if you've got the time, definitely check out everything that HR Mavericks is doing with the encyclopedias, with the panels, with the podcasts, and you will get a wide variety of opinions on some of the best ones that are there. Be mindful of what's going on in your area. Check out to see, it'll tell you on the, like, as soon as you go to apply, what systems they're using. Reach out to your communities and say, hey, what experiences do you guys have? Just everything that these ladies have talked about. Like, do the research, check out the pricing, check with your senior leaders. You don't have to make an immediate decision. You want to make sure that you do your due diligence to make sure you make the right choice for you and your company and your applicants.
Jennifer, over to you. Final piece of advice.
I'd say Heather dropped the mic on that one. That was awesome. That's exactly what I was just going to say. You've done all the research. Go back to HR Maverick and just ask again, because that community is outstanding. They're honest, and it's real. So Heather, great job. I was going to say, just drop the mic. You're good. That was awesome.
There's my pen.
Yeah, drop your pen.
All right, Joy, you got to pick up the mic again. What's your final piece of advice there?
So I would say, while doing all your research, make sure that you are prioritizing things as far as like must-haves, really, really want to have, can live without, sort of, because no system is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And there's going to be things that, you can't have it all. So make sure that you're addressing the most important things. You're finding the very root cause of the issue that you're trying to solve in having an applicant tracking system, and make sure you're solving that problem. And remember that just because you bring on an applicant tracking system vendor today as your first one doesn't mean you're married to them for the rest of your life. You can learn as you grow and implement one and take the good things out of that, and then reevaluate it every year and make sure you're getting the value out of it, and move forward. Sorry, that was more than 2 sentences.
There's the good ones in there. Sarah, right before we move to you, we did have an audience thought I just want to share. For some reason, the name didn't pull through, so I apologize that we can't say your name for some reason. But when it comes to ATSs, I believe the 3 parties that have to be considered are the candidates, hiring managers, and the talent acquisition team. A clear picture of what the experience will look like for each of those parties is important. Then it's just a discussion on whose experience is most valuable to business and moving forward from there. I think we all agree with that and had a good discussion on that earlier. So thank you so much for dropping that in. Sarah, last word to you. What's your final piece of advice?
Well, just kind of thinking about Heather's experiences when they were going through finding an ATS. When you're on those demo calls or when you're talking to the salesperson, make them work for it.
Yeah.
Don't let them just give their standardized pitch, their templated demos, whatever. Make them work for it. Make them show you in the process the digging. So, if you're going to have a specific scenario, that you've learned from in the past, use that scenario, make them show you what it's going to look like in that ATS.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you for so much. As we always share at the end, and we've already talked about a little bit, if you want to learn a little bit more about applicant tracking systems and rewatch this video, it will be posted at the top of our HR Encyclopedia entry on the subject. There's also, I think now we're up to 200 different articles on hiring specifically, different job boards, methods, etc. So check that out. And we're trying to get discounts right now, actually, for community members on a variety of tools, including Eddie, which already HR Mavericks get discount on. So join the community so you can have access to all that stuff as it comes out. But thank you for so much. You guys are amazing. Hang out with these people, connect with them on LinkedIn. They're awesome. They're super generous and smart and good people. So We appreciate you so much. And we hope everyone has an amazing rest of their day. See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.